In the vast emptiness of space, aboard a starship called the Eclipse, Captain Ryan Cole stood silently on the bridge. His hands were clasped behind his back as he stared at the large screen in front of him. The ship was quiet except for the soft hum of machinery and the occasional beep from the control panels. The crew worked diligently, their eyes focused on their tasks. Everything seemed normal, but something about the atmosphere felt different today. There was an unease lingering in the air. Ryan scanned the data displayed on the main screen. It showed nothing unusual, just endless stars and empty voids. But then, without warning, a faint signal flickered across the monitors. At first, it was barely noticeable, almost like static interference. Yet, as the seconds passed, the signal grew stronger. It wasn't random noise, it was deliberate. Someone or something was trying to communicate. Ryan turned to Lisa Grant, the communications officer seated nearby. She had short blonde hair and wore a headset that connected her directly to the ship's systems. Her fingers danced over the controls as she adjusted frequencies, attempting to clean up the transmission. "Lisa," Ryan said calmly, though there was a hint of urgency in his voice, "what are we looking at here?" She didn't respond immediately, too focused on her work. After a few moments, she leaned back slightly, frowning. "It's not one of ours, sir." "This isn't coming from any human outpost or vessel?" Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Alien?" "It's possible," Lisa replied, tilting her head as if listening more closely. "The pattern is artificial, which means it's not natural cosmic radiation." And she paused, rewinding part of the recording. "There's something else." I managed to isolate fragments of what might be language. That caught everyone's attention. A hush fell over the bridge as the crew stopped what they were doing to listen. Lisa played the clip again. The sound was distorted, filled with crackles and pops, but beneath the chaos, words could be heard. They weren't in English or any language anyone recognized, but one phrase came through clearly. "Deathworld." The room went silent. Everyone exchanged uneasy glances. Deathworld. The term itself sent shivers down their spines. In all the years humanity had explored space, certain planets had earned that ominous nickname. These worlds were places where life evolved to extremes, where danger lurked around every corner. Predatory creatures, toxic atmospheres, and unpredictable weather made them nearly impossible to survive on. If someone or something was sending a distress call from such a place, it meant trouble. Ryan stepped closer to Lisa's station, his expression thoughtful. "Can you trace the origin?" he asked. "I'm working on it now," she replied, her fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. "But based on the strength of the signal, it's far out. Beyond our usual patrol routes, deep in uncharted territory." Ryan nodded slowly. He knew what that meant. Uncharted territory was dangerous. It was full of unknown threats, both environmental and extraterrestrial. Humanity had ventured into these regions before, but always cautiously and never without good reason. Still, this SOS couldn't be ignored. Whoever or whatever had sent it was clearly in desperate need of help. Turning away from Lisa, Ryan walked toward his second-in-command, Daniel Hayes. Daniel was leaning against a railing near the back of the bridge, his arms crossed. He was a tall man with dark hair and a serious demeanor. When Ryan approached, Daniel straightened up, sensing the gravity of the situation. "What do you think?" Ryan asked quietly, keeping his voice low so only Daniel could hear. Daniel glanced at the screen showing the signal. "It's risky," he admitted. "We don't know who sent it or why. For all we know, it could be a trap." "That's true," Ryan agreed. "But if it's real, if someone really is in trouble, we can't just ignore it." Daniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know, I'm just saying we should be careful. This isn't like responding to a distress call from a human colony. We're talking about aliens here. We don't even know if they'll see us as friends or enemies." Ryan nodded. He appreciated Daniel's caution, but deep down, he already knew what he had to do. As captain of the Eclipse and leader of humanity's most advanced fleet, it was his duty to investigate. Ignoring a cry for help would go against everything he believed in. "Get Lieutenant Kelly Foster and Dr. Alan Brooks up here," Ryan instructed. And tell Sergeant Matt Riley to prepare a landing party, just in case. Daniel nodded and moved to carry out the orders. Meanwhile, Ryan returned to the center of the bridge, where Lisa was still analyzing the signal. She looked up at him expectantly. "We're going," Ryan announced to the crew. "Set a course for the source of the signal, maximum speed." A murmur rippled through the room. Some of the crew members exchanged worried looks, while others nodded in determination. They understood the risks, but they also knew their mission. The Eclipse wasn't just a warship. It was a symbol of humanity's reach into the stars. And sometimes, reaching out meant taking bold steps, even into the unknown dot, as the ship's engines roared to life and the stars outside began to blur into streaks of light. Ryan allowed himself a moment of reflection. He thought about Earth, millions of miles away, and the billions of people counting on explorers like him to pave the way forward. He thought about the countless discoveries humanity had made since leaving its home planet, and the dangers they had faced along the way. This mission would be no different. Whatever awaited them at the end of that signal, Ryan was ready. He had trained for situations like this his entire life, and though fear lingered in the corners of his mind, he pushed it aside. Fear wouldn't save anyone. Action would. Hours passed as the Eclipse raced toward its destination. The crew worked tirelessly, preparing for whatever lay ahead. Weapons were checked, supplies were loaded, and plans were drawn up. No one spoke much during this time. The weight of the unknown hung heavy over them all. Finally, the ship emerged from hyperspace and the planet appeared on the view screen. It was massive, larger than Earth, with swirling storms covering its surface. Jagged mountains rose high into the atmosphere, and thick forests stretched across vast plains. Even from orbit, the planet looked hostile. Strange creatures moved below, their shapes distorted by distance but undeniably enormous. Ryan stared at the sight, his jaw tightening. This was it, the Death World. Somewhere down there, someone or something was calling for help. Whether they found allies or enemies remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. The journey ahead would test them all in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The Eclipse hovered silently in orbit around the Death World, its sleek metallic frame reflecting the dim light of the distant sun. The crew on the bridge stared at the view screen, their faces a mix of awe and unease. Below them lay a planet unlike anything they had ever encountered. Towering trees stretched high into the sky, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers. Massive creatures roamed the surface, shaking the ground with every step. Rivers of molten lava snaked through the landscape, glowing ominously in the twilight. Captain Ryan Cole stood near the center of the bridge, his arms crossed as he studied the terrain below. He turned to Lieutenant Kelly Foster, who stood nearby with her hands clasped behind her back. Kelly was a seasoned officer known for her calm demeanor under pressure. Her sharp green eyes scanned the screen, taking in every detail. "You'll lead the landing party," Ryan said firmly. "Take Dr. Alan Brooks and Sergeant Matt Riley with you. We need to gather intel and find the source of that signal." Kelly nodded without hesitation. She trusted Ryan's judgment and knew this mission was critical. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of uneasiness that settled in her chest. This wasn't just another routine exploration, it was uncharted territory filled with unknown dangers. "Yes, sir," Kelly replied, her voice steady. "We'll be ready." Ryan gave her a small nod before turning to address the rest of the crew. "Prepare the shuttle. And make sure everyone is equipped with survival gear. This isn't going to be easy." As orders were relayed across the ship, Kelly made her way to the hangar bay. There, she met up with Dr. Alan Brooks and Sergeant Matt Riley. Alan was a tall, lanky man with glasses perched on his nose. His enthusiasm for alien life forms was well known among the crew, and he carried a satchel filled with tools for collecting samples. Matt, on the other hand, was built like a tank, his broad shoulders and stern expression giving him an air of authority. He carried a heavy-duty rifle slung over his shoulder, ready for whatever might come their way. "Ready?" Kelly asked as they approached the shuttle. "As I'll ever be," Matt replied gruffly. Checking his weapon one last time, Alan adjusted his glasses and smiled nervously. "This is incredible." "A real alien planet. Who knows what we might discover? Matt rolled his eyes but didn't say anything. He appreciated Alan's optimism, but he also knew better than to let curiosity override caution. They were stepping into the unknown, and danger could be lurking anywhere. The shuttle detached from the eclipse and began its descent toward the planet's surface. As they entered the atmosphere, turbulence rocked the craft violently. Kelly gripped the controls tightly, her knuckles white as she fought to keep the shuttle steady. Outside, the sky was a swirling mass of dark clouds and flashes of lightning. "This place doesn't look very welcoming," Matt muttered, gripping the edge of his seat. "No kidding," Alan agreed, though his tone remained excited. "But think about it, this could be our first contact with intelligent alien life." Kelly focused on navigating the stormy skies, her mind racing. She had faced dangerous situations before, but this felt different. The planet seemed alive, almost hostile, as if it resented their presence. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the shuttle broke through the clouds and landed in a clearing surrounded by towering trees. The team stepped out cautiously, their boots crunching against the thick layer of moss covering the ground. The air was humid and carried a strange, earthy smell. Strange insect-like creatures buzzed overhead, their wings shimmering in the dim light. The forest was eerily quiet except for the occasional rustle of leaves. "Stay alert," Kelly instructed, her voice low. "We don't know what's out." "Here," Matt nodded, scanning the area with his rifle at the ready. Alan pulled out a handheld scanner and began analyzing the environment. His eyes widened with excitement as data streamed across the screen. "The biodiversity here is incredible," he exclaimed. "These plants, they're unlike anything I've seen before. And the insects, they're massive." "Focus, Alan," Matt reminded him sharply. "We're not here for a science project." Alan flushed but nodded, tucking the scanner back into his bag. "Right, sorry." The team moved forward, following the faint trace of the SOS signal. The forest grew denser as they ventured deeper, the trees forming a canopy that blocked out most of the light. Shadows danced around them, making it hard to see clearly. Every sound made them jump, their nerves stretched thin. After several hours of walking, they reached a wide clearing. In the center stood a group of aliens. They were tall and slender, with shimmering skin that reflected the dim light like liquid metal. Their large, almond-shaped eyes darted around nervously, and their movements were graceful yet cautious. Kelly raised her hand, signaling the others to stop. "Hold your positions," she whispered. "Let me handle this." She took a step forward, holding her hands up to show she meant no harm. One of the aliens stepped forward as well, tilting its head curiously. It spoke in a melodic language, the words flowing like music. Alan quickly pulled out his translator device and held it up, hoping to decipher the message. "They call themselves the Valeth," Alan explained after a moment. "They're trying to warn us about something, the Zorathians. Apparently, these invaders are attacking their settlements. They've already lost many of their people." Matt tightened his grip on his rifle. "Great, just what we needed, hostile aliens." Kelly frowned, her mind working quickly. "Do they know where the Zorathians are now?" Alan relayed the question to the Valeth. After a brief exchange, he turned back to the team. "They say the Zorathians have set up a base not far from here. They're using advanced technology to hunt down the Valeth survivors." "This just got a lot more complicated," Matt muttered before they could decide their next move. The ground trembled beneath their feet. From the shadows emerged hulking figures clad in black armor, their weapons trained on the humans and Valeth alike. The Zorathians had found them. "Take cover," Kelly shouted, diving behind a fallen log. Matt opened fire immediately, his shots hitting one of the armored foes squarely in the chest. The creature staggered but didn't fall, its armor absorbing most of the impact. Alan scrambled to hide behind a rock, clutching his satchel tightly. The Valeth reacted quickly, pulling out long staffs that emitted bursts of energy. The beam struck the Zorathians, stunning them momentarily. "Keep moving!" Kelly yelled, firing her own weapon. "We can't stay here." The team retreated deeper into the forest, the Zorathians hot on their heels. Trees exploded into splinters. as energy blasts tore through the air. Matt covered the rear, ensuring no one got left behind. Alan stumbled over roots and rocks, his heart pounding in his chest. Despite the chaos, he couldn't help but marvel at the alien technology surrounding them. Finally, they reached a narrow ravine and slipped inside, hiding among the shadows. The Zorathians paused at the entrance, their glowing eyes scanning the area. For a few tense moments, no one dared to breathe. Then slowly the armored figures turned and disappeared back into the forest. Kelly exhaled deeply, lowering her weapon. That was too close. Matt wiped sweat from his brow. We need reinforcements, fast. Kelly nodded, pulling out her communicator. Lisa, do you copy? We've encountered hostiles. Requesting immediate backup. Static crackled over the line before Lisa's voice came through. Understood. Reinforcements are on the way. Hold your position. As they waited, Kelly glanced at the Valith who were huddled together, whispering urgently. She realized they had formed an unlikely alliance, one born out of necessity. But she also knew this battle was far from over. The Zorathians were powerful, and their motives remained unclear. For now, they had survived. But the fight ahead would test them all in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The narrow ravine provided temporary shelter, but the team knew they couldn't stay there for long. The Zorathians were still out there, and it was only a matter of time before they returned. Kelly Foster glanced at her team, assessing their condition. Matt Riley leaned against a rocky wall, reloading his rifle with steady hands. His face was grim, but his focus never wavered. Alan Brooks sat on the ground, clutching his scanner tightly. His glasses were slightly askew, and his breathing was shallow, but he managed a weak smile when he noticed Kelly looking at him. We're okay, he said, though his voice betrayed his nerves. Just give me a minute. Kelly nodded, giving him a reassuring look. She didn't have the heart to push him too hard. This wasn't like the simulations back on Earth. They were in the middle of an alien planet, surrounded by enemies they barely understood. Still, they had no choice but to keep moving. The Valith huddled nearby, their shimmering forms blending with the shadows of the ravine. One of them stepped forward, its movements graceful yet deliberate. It spoke again in its melodic language, gesturing toward the forest. Alan quickly pulled out his translator device and listened intently. They're saying we need to move. Alan explained after a moment. There's a hidden cave system not far from here. It'll give us better cover and maybe a chance to regroup. Kelly frowned, considering the suggestion. Trusting the Valith was risky, but they didn't have many options. Staying in the open would make them sitting ducks for the Zorathians. All right, she said finally, lead the way. The Valith nodded and gestured for the humans to follow. They moved cautiously through the ravine, their footsteps muffled by the soft moss covering the ground. The forest around them was eerily quiet now, as if the entire planet was holding its breath. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig made them flinch, their weapons raised and ready. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the entrance to the cave system. It was partially concealed by thick vines and overgrown roots, making it nearly invisible from a distance. The Valith slipped inside effortlessly, their slender forms gliding through the narrow opening. Kelly motioned for her team to follow, and one by one they squeezed through the gap. Inside, the cave was dimly lit by bioluminescent fungi clinging to the walls. The air was cool and damp, carrying a faint earthy scent. The Valith led them deeper into the tunnels, their glowing skin casting soft light on the jagged rock formations. Kelly kept her weapon drawn, her eyes scanning every shadow. She didn't trust this place, not completely, but it was safer than being out in the open. Finally, they reached a larger chamber. The ceiling was high and the space was wide enough for all of them to gather comfortably. The Valith began speaking again, their voices low and urgent. Alan translated as best he could, piecing together fragments of their message. They're telling us more about the Zorathians, Alan said, his brow furrowed in concentration. Apparently these invaders aren't just attacking the Valith, they're harvesting resources from the planet. They're using some kind of advanced machinery to strip mine the land, destroying everything in their path. Matt clenched his jaw, shaking his head. So they're not just hostile, they're greedy too, lovely. Kelly crossed her arms, her mind racing. If the Zorathians were after resources, that meant they weren't going to leave anytime soon. And if they stayed, the Valeth wouldn't stand a chance. Neither would the humans, for that matter. They needed a plan and fast. What? About reinforcements? Kelly asked, turning to Matt. How long until they get here? Matt checked his communicator, frowning. Lisa said they're on the way, but it could take hours. Maybe longer, depending on how bad the weather is up there. Hours that felt like an eternity in their current situation. The Zorathians could find them at any moment, and if they did, they'd be outnumbered and outgunned. Kelly knew they couldn't rely solely on backup. They had to act. Okay, she said firmly, addressing the group. Here's what we're going to do. We'll split into 2 teams. Matt, you and I will scout ahead, see if we can locate the Zorathian base. Alan, you stay here with the Valeth. Keep working on understanding their tech. If we can figure out how to use it, it might give us an edge. Alan nodded eagerly, already pulling out his tools. I'll do my best. Matt gave Kelly a skeptical look. You sure splitting up is a good idea? We don't know what's out there. I know, Kelly admitted, but we can't afford to waste time. If we find their base, we can hit them where it hurts and maybe buy ourselves some breathing room. Matt hesitated for a moment, then nodded reluctantly. All right, let's do it. With the plan set, Kelly and Matt prepared to leave. They checked their weapons and supplies one last time, ensuring they were ready for whatever lay ahead. Before stepping out of the chamber, Kelly turned to Alan. Stay safe, she said, her tone serious, and keep your communicator on. If anything happens, let us know immediately. I will, Alan promised, giving her a small wave. As Kelly and Matt disappeared into the tunnels, the Valeth gathered around Alan. One of them handed him a small device, its surface etched with intricate patterns. Alan examined it curiously, his eyes lighting up with excitement. This could be it, he whispered to himself. If I can figure out how this works. Back in the tunnels, Kelly and Matt moved swiftly, their footsteps echoing softly against the stone walls. The bioluminescent fungi provided just enough light to see by, but the darkness still pressed in around them. Every sound made them pause, their hearts pounding in their chests. After a while, they reached a section of the cave that opened up to the surface. Peering outside, they saw the Zorathian base in the distance. Massive machines churned through, the landscape tearing apart trees and rocks. Armored figures patrolled the area, their weapons gleaming in the dim light. In the center of it all stood a towering structure, a command center, perhaps. There, Kelly whispered, pointing. That's got to be their main hub. Matt nodded, his expression grim. If we take that out, we might cripple their operation. But how do we even get close? Kelly thought for a moment, her eyes scanning the terrain. We'll need a distraction. Something big enough to draw their attention away from the base. Matt raised an eyebrow. Big enough? Like what? Kelly smirked faintly. Leave that to me. They retreated back into the caves, careful to avoid detection. When they returned to the chamber, Alan was deep in conversation with the Valeth, his translator device glowing faintly. He looked up as they entered, his face flushed with excitement. I think I've figured something out, he said quickly. This device, they use it to communicate over long distances. If we can modify it, we might be able to send a signal that jams their equipment. That's perfect, Kelly said, her eyes lighting up. Do it, Alan nodded and got to work, his fingers flying over the device. The Valeth watched silently, their expressions unreadable. After several tense minutes, Alan held up the modified gadget triumphantly. It's ready, he said. But we'll need to get close to their base to activate it, Kelly smiled faintly. That's where the distraction comes in. She explained her plan to the group, her voice calm but firm. Matt would create a diversion by setting off a series of explosions near the perimeter of the Zorathian camp. While the invaders were distracted, Kelly and Alan would sneak into the base and activate the jamming device. It was risky, but it was their best shot. As the team prepared to execute the plan, Kelly felt a surge of determination. They had come so far, faced so much danger, and now they were about to take the fight directly to the enemy, whatever happened. Next, she knew they had to succeed for the Valith, for humanity, and for the future of this planet. With a final nod, the team moved out, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The team moved quickly through the tunnels, their footsteps echoing softly against the stone walls. The air was damp and cool, but tension hung heavy in the atmosphere. Kelly Foster led the way, her weapon drawn and her eyes scanning every shadow. Behind her, Matt Riley carried a small pack filled with explosives, his jaw clenched tightly as he prepared for the role he would play in the plan. Alan Brooks followed closely, clutching the modified Valith device like it was a lifeline. His glasses fogged slightly from the humidity, but he wiped them clean without breaking stride. When they reached the edge of the cave system, Kelly signaled for everyone to stop. She peered outside cautiously, her gaze sweeping over the Zorathian base. The towering machines continued to tear apart the landscape, their metallic arms crushing trees and rocks with ease. Armored figures patrolled the area, their weapons glinting ominously in the dim light. In the center of it all stood the command structure, a massive, angular building that seemed to pulse faintly with energy. "This is it," Kelly whispered, turning to the others. "Matt, you know what to do? Set up the charges along the perimeter. Make sure they're spaced out enough to draw attention." Matt nodded, his expression grim. "Got it. I'll make enough noise to keep them busy." Kelly then turned to Alan. "You and I will head straight for the command center. Once we're inside, activate the jamming device. It should disable their communications and maybe even some of their equipment." Alan swallowed hard, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his grip on the device. "What if it doesn't work?" "It has to," Kelly said firmly, meeting his gaze. "We don't have another option." With the plan set, Matt slipped out first, moving silently toward the outer edges of the Zorathian camp. He stayed low, using the cover of fallen trees and large rocks to avoid detection. Meanwhile, Kelly and Alan waited until they heard the first explosion. A bright flash lit up the night sky, followed by a deafening boom that echoed across the land. The Zorathians immediately sprang into action, rushing toward the source of the disturbance. "Now!" Kelly whispered sharply. Grabbing Alan's arm and pulling him forward, they darted across the open ground, sticking to the shadows as much as possible. The second explosion went off just moments later, drawing even more Zorathians away from the command center. Chaos erupted around them, with shouts and blasts of energy filling the air. Kelly kept her focus sharp, her heart pounding in her chest as she led Alan closer to their target. Reaching the base of the command structure, they found an entrance guarded by two armored figures. Kelly motioned for Alan to stay back while she crept forward, her movements silent and deliberate. With a swift motion, she disarmed one guard and knocked him unconscious before the other could react. The second guard swung his weapon at her, but Kelly dodged and countered with a precise strike, sending him sprawling to the ground. "Clear," she called softly, waving Alan forward. Inside, the command center was a maze of glowing panels and humming machinery. Alien symbols floated above control surfaces, pulsing with rhythmic light. Alan stared in awe for a moment, his scientific curiosity threatening to overwhelm his fear. Shaking himself back to reality, he pulled out the modified device and began working quickly. "How long will this take?" Kelly asked, keeping watch near the entrance. "Just a minute," Alan replied, his fingers flying over the controls of the device. "I need to sync it with their systems." As Alan worked, Kelly scanned the room, her weapon ready. Every second felt like an eternity, and the sounds of battle outside grew louder. Suddenly, the door behind them slid open with a hiss. Two Zorathians entered, their weapons raised. Kelly reacted instantly, firing her weapon and taking down one of them. The other fired back, forcing her to dive for cover. "Alan, hurry!" she shouted, exchanging fire with the remaining Zorathian. "I'm almost done!" Alan yelled, sweat dripping down his face as he frantically adjusted the settings. The Zorathian advanced, its armor absorbing most of Kelly's shots. She rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding a blast that scorched the wall where she had been standing. Desperation fueled her next move. She grabbed a nearby piece of debris and hurled it at the creature, startling it just long enough for her to close the distance. With a fierce kick, she sent the Zorathian stumbling backward, giving her the opening she needed to finish it off. Breathing heavily, Kelly turned back to Alan. "Is it ready?" "Yes," Alan shouted, pressing the final button on the device. A low hum filled the room, growing louder as the jamming signal activated. Lights flickered across the command center, and several panels went dark. "We did it!" Alan exclaimed, relief washing over his face, but their victory was short-lived. Alarms blared throughout the structure, red lights flashing as the Zorathians realized something was wrong. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridors outside, growing closer with each. "Passing second, we need to go, now," Kelly ordered, grabbing Alan's arm and pulling him toward the exit. They sprinted through the maze-like halls, dodging patrols and leaping over fallen debris. The Zorathians were scrambling to regain control, but the jamming signal had clearly disrupted their coordination. Explosions continued to rock the perimeter, and the invaders' forces were spread thin trying to deal with Matt's diversion. Finally, Kelly and Alan burst out of the command center and into the chaos outside. Smoke filled the air, and the ground shook with the force of another detonation. Through the haze, they spotted Matt running toward them, his rifle slung over his shoulder. "Did it work?" he asked, panting heavily. "It did," Kelly confirmed, nodding. "But we're not out of this yet. Let's move." The trio raced back toward the caves, retracing their steps as fast as they could. Behind them, the Zorathians regrouped, their anger evident in the furious shouts and bursts of energy aimed in their direction. One blast narrowly missed Kelly, singeing the edge of her jacket. She didn't look back, focusing only on reaching safety. When they finally reached the ravine leading to the hidden cave system, the Valith were waiting for them. Their glowing forms shimmered with relief as they ushered the humans inside. Once everyone was safely within the tunnels, the group paused to catch their breath. "That was insane," Matt muttered, leaning against a wall. "But it worked. For now," Kelly added, her tone serious. "The jamming signal won't last forever. We need to get off this planet before the Zorathians recover," Alan nodded, still clutching the device. "And we need to warn the fleet. If the Zorathians are harvesting resources here, they might come after Earth next," Kelly agreed. They couldn't afford to underestimate their enemy. For now, though, they had bought themselves some time and possibly saved the Valith from extinction. As they rested briefly in the relative safety of the caves, Kelly allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. This mission had tested them, all in ways she hadn't anticipated, but they had risen to the challenge. "We'll get through this," she said aloud, more to herself than anyone else. Together, her words seemed to lift the spirits of the group. Even Matt managed a small smile, though it was tinged with exhaustion. Outside, the battle raged on, but for now they had survived. And survival was the first step toward victory. The team rested briefly in the hidden cave, catching their breath and regrouping after the chaos of the past hours. Kelly Foster leaned against a rocky wall, her weapon still close at hand. Despite the exhaustion etched on her face, her sharp eyes remained alert, scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. Matt Riley sat nearby, cleaning his rifle methodically, his movements deliberate and calm. Alan Brooks, though visibly drained, couldn't stop fiddling with the modified Valith device, checking its settings to ensure it was still functioning properly. The Valith gathered around them, their shimmering forms glowing faintly in the dim light. One of them stepped forward, its melodic voice soft but urgent. Alan quickly pulled out his translator device to interpret the message. "They're thanking us," Alan explained, his voice filled with awe. "They say the jamming signal has slowed the Zorathians significantly. Their forces are scattered, and they've stopped attacking the Valith settlements for now." Kelly nodded, a small sense of relief washing over her. The plan had worked at least partially. But she knew better than to let her guard down. The Zorathians were dangerous, and their technology was far more advanced than anything humanity had encountered before. The jamming signal wouldn't hold them off forever. "We need to get back to the Eclipse," Kelly said firmly, addressing the group. We can't stay here. The Zorathians will recover, and when they do, they'll come after us. Matt stood up, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. Agreed. Let's move while we still have the advantage. Alan hesitated, glancing at the Valith. What about them? They helped us. We can't just leave them here. Kelly understood his concern. The Valith had risked everything to aid the humans, and abandoning them now would feel like betrayal. Still, there was only so much they could do. We'll take some of them with us, she decided. Anyone who wants to come? The rest will have to trust that we'll return with reinforcements. One of the Valith stepped forward, its large eyes meeting Kelly's. It spoke again, its tone resolute. Alan translated quickly. They understand. A few of them will go with us to guide us back to their main settlement. The others will stay behind and prepare for the worst. Kelly nodded, grateful for their cooperation. All right. Let's move. With the decision made, the group prepared to leave the caves. The Valith who chose to accompany them moved silently, their graceful forms blending seamlessly with the shadows. Kelly led the way, her weapon drawn and her senses on high alert. The journey back through the ravine was tense, every sound making them flinch. The forest was eerily quiet now, as if the entire planet was holding its breath. When they reached the clearing where the shuttle had landed, Kelly felt a surge of relief. The craft was still intact, untouched by the Zorathians. She signaled for everyone to board quickly, her eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of movement. The engines roared to life as soon as they were all inside, and the shuttle lifted off, soaring into the sky. From above, the devastation caused by the Zorathians was even more apparent. Swaths of the forest had been reduced to ash, and massive scars marred the landscape where the invaders had stripped the land of resources. Kelly clenched her jaw, anger simmering beneath the surface. Humanity had faced threats before, but this was different. The Zorathians weren't just hostile, they were systematic destroyers, leaving nothing but ruin in their wake. As the shuttle docked with the Eclipse, Captain Ryan Cole greeted them personally. His expression was grim as he listened to Kelly's report. The bridge crew worked tirelessly, preparing the ship for departure while analyzing the data collected from the modified Valith device. We can't leave yet, Kelly insisted. If we retreat now, the Zorathians will wipe out the Valith completely, and then they'll come after us. Ryan nodded, his eyes narrowing. You're right, but we can't take them on alone. We need reinforcements, and fast. Lisa Grant, the communications officer, turned in her seat. I've already sent a distress signal to the fleet. Reinforcements should arrive within the hour. Good, Ryan said, his voice firm. Until then, we hold our ground. Prepare the fighters. If the Zorathians make a move, we'll be ready. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. The crew fortified the ship's defenses, arming every available fighter and preparing for battle. The Valith who had accompanied them shared what little they knew about the Zorathians' weaknesses, helping the humans strategize. Alan worked alongside the Valith, studying their technology and finding ways to integrate it with human systems. For the first time since arriving on the Deathworld, the humans and aliens truly felt like allies. When the reinforcements finally arrived, the sight was breathtaking. Dozens of ships descended from the sky, their sleek forms gleaming in the dim light. Fighters streaked across the horizon, taking position around the Eclipse. The combined force was a formidable sight, and for the first time, the Zorathians seemed hesitant. Ryan gave the order to strike. The human fleet launched a coordinated attack, targeting the Zorathian command center and their mining operations. Explosions lit up the surface of the planet, shaking the ground below. The Zorathians fought back, fiercely, their advanced weapons cutting through the air like lightning. But the humans had something the invaders hadn't anticipated. Teamwork. The Valith joined the fight, using their own weapons to stun and disable the Zorathians. Their energy staffs glowed brightly as they unleashed bursts of power, turning the tide of battle in their favor. Together, the humans and Valith pushed the Zorathians back, forcing them to retreat deeper into the forest. Despite the progress, Kelly knew they couldn't win this fight alone. The Zorathians were too powerful, their numbers too great. As the Battle raged on. She realized they needed to hit the invaders where it hurt most their command ship. "Captain," Kelly said urgently, stepping onto the bridge. "If we destroy their command ship, we can cripple their entire operation." Ryan considered her words carefully. "It's risky. That ship is heavily armored, and getting close won't be easy." "I know," Kelly replied, her voice steady. "But it's our best shot. Let me lead a strike team." "We'll infiltrate the ship and plant explosives." Ryan hesitated, weighing the risks. Finally, he nodded. "Do it, but be careful. You're not going in alone." Kelly assembled a small team, including Matt and Alan, along with a few volunteers from the fleet. They boarded a stolen Zorthian transport, cloaking themselves in the enemy's technology to avoid detection. As they approached the massive command ship, Kelly felt a knot of tension tighten in her stomach. This mission would be the most dangerous one yet. Inside the ship, the air was cold and metallic, the walls pulsing faintly with alien energy. The team moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows as they made their way toward the core chamber. Along the way, they encountered resistance Zorthian soldiers patrolling the halls, their weapons trained on intruders. Matt covered the rear, taking down enemies with precision shots while Kelly and Alan pressed forward. Finally, they reached the core chamber. In the center of the room stood a massive orb, glowing with an eerie blue light. It pulsed rhythmically, feeding power to the entire ship. Kelly pulled out a set of explosives, setting them carefully around the orb. "How long do we have?" Matt asked, keeping watch at the entrance. 5 minutes, Kelly replied, her hands trembling slightly as she worked. "Once I hit the detonator, we run." Alan nodded, clutching his scanner tightly. "I'll monitor the countdown. Just give me a second." As the timer ticked down, the team braced themselves for the escape. Suddenly, the door hissed open, and a group of Zorathians stormed in, their weapons raised. Kelly reacted instantly, firing her weapon and taking down several of them. Matt joined the fight, his rifle blazing as he held off the advancing enemies. "Go!" Kelly shouted to Alan, who was still monitoring the timer. "We'll cover you!" Alan pressed the final button, activating the countdown. The orb began to crackle with energy, sparks flying as the explosives destabilized its core. "Let's move!" Alan yelled, grabbing his gear and sprinting toward the exit. The team ran as fast as they could, dodging blasts of energy and leaping over fallen debris. Behind them, the core chamber erupted in a blinding flash of light, sending shockwaves throughout the ship. They reached a maintenance hatch just in time. Leaping onto a waiting shuttle piloted by Lisa Grant. As the shuttle sped away, the command ship exploded in a brilliant burst of flames, lighting up the sky. The shockwave rippled outward, disabling the remaining Zorthian forces on the planet below. The humans in Valeth watched in silence as the invaders retreated. Their once mighty fleet reduced to rubble, back on the Eclipse, the crew celebrated their hard-fought victory. The Valeth expressed their gratitude, promising to share knowledge and resources with humanity in return for their assistance. Though the battle was over, both sides knew this was only the beginning. The Zorathians would return, and when they did, humanity and the Valeth would stand together. As the fleet prepared to leave the Deathworld behind, Ryan gazed out at the stars. He thought about the sacrifices they had made and the lives they had saved. The road ahead would be difficult, but for now, they had done what was right. And sometimes that was enough.